Good afternoon, colleagues. Dr. Richard J. Sands here. Thank you for allowing me to share a story that is both professional and personal. This presentation is not meant to be a technical Six Sigma lecture. It is the story of how one question, asked in 2008, opened a path into process improvement, doctoral research, writing, and teaching. As I walk through this journey, I want to connect the professional experiences with the academic question that eventually became my dissertation. My hope is that this also speaks to our work as faculty, where career experience, research, and teaching often come together in meaningful ways. I organized the presentation into 4 acts, so the story has a clear progression. Act 1 begins with the career moment that introduced me to Six Sigma. Act 2 explains why the criticism surrounding Six Sigma captured my attention. Act 3 focuses on the dissertation journey itself, including the research questions, data collection, and findings. Act 4 looks back at how this work continued to shape my career, my teaching, and my professional identity. Rather than moving through the slides as separate topics, I invite you to think of them as chapters in one larger story. Act 1 begins with the simple starting point. In 2008, I was not thinking about Six Sigma, dissertation research, or writing a book. I was thinking about career growth and how to add greater value in healthcare and business settings. This first act is about the beginning of curiosity. It shows how a single conversation can redirect a professional path, especially when the right advice arrives at the right time. In 2008, Six Sigma was not part of my vocabulary. I had a background in healthcare operations and business, but I was looking for a way to become more valuable as a professional. I wanted a discipline that would strengthen how I solved problems, improved processes, and contributed to organizations. That is the context for the beginning of the journey. I was not searching for a dissertation topic yet. I was simply asking how I could grow, and that question led to a conversation that changed my direction. The turning point came through a recruiter named Mark at Kaiser Permanente. I asked him a practical career question, essentially, what could I do to progress my career? His response was straightforward: learn about Six Sigma. At the time, I had never heard of it. That is what made the moment so interesting. It was not a carefully planned academic decision. It was a professional recommendation that created curiosity. Looking back, that single suggestion became the first step toward graduate study, doctoral research, and a career identity built around process improvement. Before moving further into the story, it is helpful to define Six Sigma briefly. Six Sigma was introduced and established as a data-driven quality improvement methodology by Bill Smith at Motorola in 1986. At its core, it is about improving processes by reducing variation, defects, errors, and mistakes. For a business and management audience, the important point is that Six Sigma is not only about statistics. It is a disciplined way of thinking about performance, customer requirements, process capability, and measurable improvement. Six Sigma is built around the pursuit of process perfection, but not in an abstract way. It gives organizations tools for measuring performance, identifying variation, and improving process outcomes. The Sigma level provides one way to describe how far a process is from producing defects. The belt structure also matters because it creates a professional development path. White belt, yellow belt, green belt, black belt, and master black belt represent increasing levels of training, project leadership, and technical skill. This structure became part of what attracted me to the methodology. This slide helps make the Sigma level more practical. Percentages can sound impressive, but the difference between 99% and Six Sigma performance becomes much clearer when we translate it into everyday outcomes. Unsafe water, wrong prescriptions, electrical outages, airplane landings, and surgical procedures make the point more concrete. For students and practitioners, this is often where Six Sigma begins to make sense. Small percentages of error can still create serious consequences when the process is repeated thousands or millions of times. The initial curiosity developed into a commitment over time. In 2008, I asked Mark how I could progress my career. That same year, I began Villanova's Lean Six Sigma Master's program. In 2009, I completed the program and began the PhD in Management program at Walden University. From 2010 to 2015, I worked as a Six Sigma Black Belt consultant at United Health Group. Along the way, I earned Lean Six Sigma Black Belt certification and DMA-DV Advanced Six Sigma certification. The journey eventually led to the dissertation in 2016 and the book in 2024. At United Health Group, Six Sigma moved from being something I studied to something I practiced. My role as a Six Sigma Black Belt consultant gave me the opportunity to apply the methodology to real healthcare problems and process improvement work. This period was important because I observed both successes and failures. Some projects produced meaningful improvement, while others struggled. Those mixed experiences became important later. They helped me recognize that the real question was not simply whether Six Sigma works, but under what conditions it is supported, implemented, and sustained. Act 2 shifts from my professional exposure to the question that eventually became academic. As I learned more about Six Sigma, I also discovered that not everyone viewed it positively. Some authors and commentators described it as a fad. Others suggested it failed too often, and some questioned whether it created lasting value. That criticism did not discourage me. Instead, it raised a research question. Were these criticisms fair, or were organizations blaming the methodology for problems rooted elsewhere? This slide captures the debate that caught my attention. Six Sigma was being described in some publications as a fad, a failure, or a misunderstood methodology. The language was strong, and in some cases the criticism seemed to be more opinion-based than evidence-based. As a practitioner, that bothered me. I had seen Six Sigma provide value, but I had also seen projects struggle. The question became whether the methodology itself was failing or whether other factors, such as leadership, resources, scope, and execution, were responsible for many failed projects. At the center of the issue was a basic question. Why do some Six Sigma projects fail? One possible explanation is that the methodology itself is responsible. Another is that leadership, resources, project selection, and execution are the real causes. This distinction mattered to me because it moved the conversation away from simple opinions. If we are going to say a methodology failed, then we should be willing to test that claim. That was the beginning of the research direction. The literature revealed a gap worth investigating. There were many claims and criticisms, but the broader conversation often lacked holistic empirical research. I wanted to test the claims rather than simply debate them. The dissertation became a way to examine whether Six Sigma was being blamed unfairly for project failure. The bridge on this slide represents that movement from professional frustration to scholarly inquiry. The gap between opinion and evidence became the foundation for the study. Act 3 is where the professional question becomes formal research. This is the dissertation journey, but I want to emphasize that it was a journey in every sense. The question evolved, the proposal developed, the study was reviewed, the data were collected, and the findings were analyzed over several years. For us as faculty, this part of the story may feel familiar. Research rarely arrives fully formed. It is tested, challenged, revised, and refined until the final study becomes stronger than the original idea. My dissertation asked, when does Six Sigma reduce defects and increase efficiencies? The study was completed through a PhD in management with a focus on leadership and organizational change. It was quantitative in design and focused on failed Six Sigma DMAIC projects. The important point here is that the study did not begin with a desire to defend Six Sigma at all costs. It began with a desire to understand failure more accurately. I wanted to know whether the methodology was the true cause, or whether other organizational conditions played a larger role. This timeline shows that the dissertation was a journey, not an event. The premise began in December 2011, followed by the prospectus in January 2012. The proposal oral presentation took place in September 2013, with IRB approval in October 2013. The University Research Review occurred in January 2014, followed by the final oral defense teleconference in November 2015, and ProQuest submission in January 2016. Every step moved the study forward. Each stage brought clarification, challenge, and refinement. The question became research through the framing of the null and alternative hypotheses. The null hypothesis stated that Six Sigma projects do not fail because of the methodology. The alternative hypothesis stated that Six Sigma methodology causes projects to fail. This was important because it moved the discussion from personal opinion to statistical testing. The conclusion would not be based on whether I liked Six Sigma or believed in it as a practitioner. The conclusion would be based on evidence collected from practitioners with direct experience. 3 questions guided the investigation. First, was management support lacking? Second, was project scope incorrect? Third, was the methodology responsible? These questions help separate organizational and execution factors from the methodology itself. I wanted to understand whether failure came from the tool or from the environment in which the tool was applied. That distinction is critical in business research and also in teaching, because students often need to learn that methods do not operate in a vacuum. Leadership, context, and execution matter. Finding the right people to ask was essential. The target group consisted of Six Sigma Black Belts and DMADV project participants. These were not casual observers. They were practitioners with experience in completed projects, including projects that had failed or struggled. Recruitment included professional networks connected to Kaiser Permanente, United Health Group, LinkedIn, and snowball sampling. The core value of this approach was practice-based evidence. I wanted the data to come from people who had actually lived through the work. The study followed a simple 3-step process: design, collect, and analyze. First, the survey was carefully designed to target Six Sigma practitioners and gather meaningful input. Second, the data were collected using an 18-question survey with a 5-point Likert scale. The survey evaluated support, scope, data, training, readiness, resources, and methodology. Third, Excel and Minitab were used to convert the responses into statistical output to test the hypothesis. In other words, practitioner experience became measurable data. The data collection process began with 206 individuals contacted. From that group, 70 completed surveys were received, producing a 34% response rate. The minimum required number was 52, so the study exceeded the required threshold. For a dissertation study, this was an important milestone. It meant there was enough data to proceed with analysis and test the research question responsibly. It also gave me confidence that the findings reflected meaningful practitioner input rather than isolated opinion. The key result was that 82.9% of respondents rejected methodology as the cause. Of the 70 responses, 52 identified other reasons for project failure. Only 3 of 70 agreed that the methodology was responsible, and none strongly agreed. In addition, most respondents reported appropriate scope and adequate training. The clear message was that the methodology, scope, and training generally met expectations. The failures appeared to be connected more strongly to organizational and implementation factors than to Six Sigma as a methodology. The conclusion was straightforward. Six Sigma was not the failure point. The methodology itself was not failing. Organizations were struggling with how they implemented it, supported it, and sustained it. This finding matters because it changes the conversation. Instead of asking whether Six Sigma is good or bad, the better question is whether organizations provide the leadership, resources, execution discipline, and support needed for the methodology to succeed. That conclusion has continued to shape how I think about process improvement and management education. Act 4 looks back at what the journey has meant. By this point, Six Sigma was no longer just a certification, a job role, or a dissertation topic. It had become part of my professional identity and part of how I approach problems. This final act is not about claiming that Six Sigma is perfect. It is about acknowledging that the journey has been good to me. It shaped my career, deepened my thinking, and created opportunities I could not have anticipated in 2008. Looking back, Six Sigma helped define my healthcare career and strengthen my problem-solving ability. It supported consulting and leadership roles, helped create a professional identity, opened unexpected opportunities, and eventually became a way of thinking. For me, the value of Six Sigma is not only the tools, it is the discipline of asking better questions, using data, understanding process variation, and looking for root causes before jumping to conclusions. Those habits are valuable in business, healthcare, teaching, and leadership. One of the encouraging parts of this journey is that the dissertation continued reaching readers long after graduation. The ProQuest all-time report as of August 1st, 2026, showed 3,870 total downloads, 134 metadata page hits, and reach across 121 countries. For me, that is meaningful. A dissertation can feel like something completed for a degree, but this reminded me that research can continue to serve others after the defense is over. The work moved beyond the classroom and reached a global audience of readers. The research journey also continued through the publication of my book, Six Sigma Success Factors. The book helped extend the conversation beyond the dissertation by explaining Six Sigma, addressing common criticisms, and offering practical applications for practitioners. This was an important step because it allowed the research to move into a more accessible format. The dissertation answered a research question, while the book gave me a way to share the lessons more broadly with professionals, students, and others interested in process improvement. Thank you for allowing me to share this journey with you. What began as a simple career question in 2008 became a path through professional development, doctoral research, teaching, writing, and reflection. As I close, I hope the larger message is clear. Sometimes one question can change the direction of a career. For me, that question led to Six Sigma, and Six Sigma became a framework for solving problems, asking better questions, and helping others think more clearly about performance and improvement. I would be glad to take your questions.